the skies.
Good evening, Cabaret Lab. So, today is Earth Day, and I have a story that is very much of the Earth. This is the story of the Tichborne Dole. Now, Tichborne is a small village in Hampshire, not far from here. And near the manor house is an area called the Crawls. And this is how this story got its name. Now, every year in Tichborne, there is a festival, and it is the giving of bread to the poor. And this is a tradition that's carried on since 1150. In 1150, in the manor house was Sir Roger and Lady Mabella. And Lady Mabella was a warm, generous woman who often gave to the poor. Sir Roger, not so much. He was a typical landed gentry of the time, rich, avaricious, and really not interested in the serfs that surrounded the lands. Now, something you should know. In those days, when a woman married, she had to give over whatever money she had to her husband. So although Lady Mabella had been independently wealthy, now all her money had gone over to Sir Roger, and he held the purse strings, which meant that every time she wanted money, she had to beg him. And he wasn't keen to hand over anything, so every time she wanted something, he would ask why. Now, this went on for years, until eventually in her old age, unfortunately, Lady Mabella got sick, and she took to her bed. And it was apparent that she wasn't long for this earth. And so she turned to her husband and said, Roger, when I am gone, will you continue to help and feed the poor like I have done? And Sir Roger really wasn't interested. And she begged and pleaded with him, and eventually he relented just. He actually issued her a challenge, and he said, if you can get out of your bed and cover enough land to grow the wheat, I will give that wheat to the poor for you every year. So Lady Mabella called for her maids, and they took her and carried her outside. They stood her up, but unfortunately Lady Mabella was so weak, it was pretty quick before she was sitting on the ground. And Sir Roger sat with satisfaction thinking, there's no way she can win. Now, Lady Mabella wasn't having any of this. And so she got up, and with great determination, she accepted and took on Sir Roger's challenge. Sir Roger had given her a burning log, and the challenge was to get as round as far as she could before the flame blew out. Lady Mabella set off, crawling on her hands and knees, and she crawled and crawled and crawled, and Sir Roger was getting increasingly angry as he could see the flame disappearing into the distance. And then suddenly she turned. But she carried on, crawling and crawling and crawling, until eventually she turned again. And she started making her way back towards the house. And Sir Roger, by now, was seething. And he watched the flame, thinking any second now it's got to go out. But it didn't. And Lady Mabella kept crawling and crawling and crawling. And just as she got back to the point to where she had started, the flame went out. Sir Roger was livid. Lady Mabella had crawled an area of 23 acres. And to give that some perspective, an acre is the size of a football pitch. So for a sick woman, she had covered a lot of ground. Sir Roger could not believe what she had done. Lady Mabella died shortly afterwards, and Sir Roger was compelled to keep up her promise. Because, just before she died, Lady Mabella, in her wisdom, laid a curse on the house, and the curse was that should the dole be ceased, the head of the household would have 7 daughters, and then the house would start to fall down, and the name of the family would die out. And so this tradition continued until 1796. Now in 1796, unfortunately, during the handing over of the dole, some vagrants caused some trouble. And the resident then, who was Sir Henry, decided to stop giving the dole to the poor and just to give it to the church. Unfortunately for Sir Henry, all his children turned out to be daughters. He had 7 of them. Now, that wouldn't have been so bad. But his younger brother, Sir Charles, who did have a son, his son died aged 6. And Sir Henry, fearful that the curse was in fact about to kick in, decided to resume the dole. And so, ever since then, it's continued until this day. I hope you like my story. Happy Earth Day, everyone.